Very good afternoon to everyone. So today we will be doing the analysis of 27th of September. Um, so let's start. This is the Delhi edition, and at page number 8, we have got this news of balsams in full bloom add to visual treat in Munnar. Now, this section becomes very important from your environment section. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so balsams in full bloom add to visual treat in Munnar, presenting a visual feast to tourists. So, presenting a visual feast to tourists, balsams, also known as genus impatiens, are in full bloom in Munnar called Kasikumba and Nakohu. Locally, its small pink flowers and a major attraction along the Devikulam stretch of the Kochi Dhanushkori National Highway. So, where are you going to find them? What balsams? In the stretch of Kochi Dhanushkori National Highway. Balsams are also known as Lakshmi knot. So they are also known as what? Lakshmi knot. And what is the reason that they are known as Lakshmi knot? Because of the bursting of mature seeds and seed distribution. So, because of the bursting of mature seeds and seed distribution, botanists say the large scale flowering of balsams indicate that microclimate is still active in the Munnar Hill Station. So, since there is blossoming of balsams, so the author wants to say that there is microclimate which is active in mineral stations. But of the 220 balsam species in India, 135 are found in southern Western Ghats. So if you see the map of India is something like this, and then you have Western Ghats over here, you have Eastern Ghats over here. So they are saying in the southern Western Ghats, what do you find? You find that balsams are still active in the mineral stations. In the southern Western Ghats. Now, what else they are talking about? They are saying that Anamudi, the highest mountain in the Western Ghats and the surrounding high ranges, are known for the diversity of the wild balsam. So, the area of Anamudi, or you can say the area around the Anamudi, which is the highest mountain in the Western Ghats. So Anamudi is your highest uh, mountain in the Western Ghat. Is what? Now here you will find what diversity of wild balsams. Now new species of balsams have been discovered from these areas. There are balsams endemic to the high ranges. So you find that this species balsams is endemic. It is an endemic species to the high ranges. There are more than 30 species of balsams in the Periyar Tiger Reserve. which is where in the regions of Kerala. Now, the normal life cycle of balsams is from June to December. The plant mainly grows inside the pockets of forest areas. With the loss of specific habitats, many species have become rare, threatened, or even extinct. This fleshy orophytic herb, that means this is known as a fleshy orophytic herb, usually prefers humid habitats and completes the life cycle in the rainy season. Balsams are a major indicator species of climate change. If climate change occurs in any area, it will reflect in the plant population. A forest official says that 46 balsam species are found in the Munnar landscape, spreading from the Munnar to the Chinnar and the Bison Valley. Now, Munnar Wildlife, here the person is talking about that there are 40 wild species in the Ervaculum National Park. So the Forest Department ensures the protection of balsams in the forest areas and says that 46 species of balsams have been discovered in the altitude of Munnar. No other place in the world has such diversity. So they are saying that the kind of diversity we in the India are having of balsams, there is no other place in the world having such high species. Okay, so this was about balsams. Now let's move on to the next analysis. Okay, so page number 60, we have this news coming. What Indians eat more salt than what WHO has recommended. So we are having much more salt than what is recommended from WHO. So let's see how. Okay, so a survey that was undertaken by ICMR, that is Indian Council of Medical Research, found that salt intake was higher among the employed sections, tobacco users, and those with elevated blood pressure. What is the estimated mean? The estimated mean daily salt intake in India stands at 8 gram. That is 8.9 gram a day for men and 7.1 gram for women. So the intake of salt with respect to the men is 8.9 gram a day for men, and there is 7.1 gram for women. Okay, and this is again what against the WHO recommendation of up to 5 gram daily a study has found. That means India is taking on an average how much, what they've said is 8 gram of what? Salt, and simultaneously this is bifurcated 8.9 gram for men's section and 7.1 gram for women's section. And then they say that what as WHO recommended. So the recommendation of WHO is said for what? Now the WHO has recommended that you need to take how much? You need to take 5 grams of salt daily. So going against the recommendation of WHO, what are Indians consuming? So Indians are consuming 8.9 grams by men and 7.1 gram by women. The salt intake was significantly higher among men, those in rural areas, and overweight and obese respondents. So, according to a recent survey by ICMR, this was published in the journal Nature. So, you can put this in mains answer writing, or if you are going for a test writing, if it's related to certain current affairs section. That mainly what is happening is that this is coming from the rural area news, and what you found is that the men's, those in rural areas, are overweight and obese respondents are having or consuming higher salt or much great salt. The study carried out as part of the National Non-Communicable Disease Monitoring Survey in India noted that the sample population had a low perception of the harmful effects of high salt intake and practices to limit consumption. So, the mean dietary salt intake is high in the Indian population, which calls for planning and implementing control of dietary salt consumption measures. Now, what is WHO talking about? That since the consumption is very high, so what you need to do is that you need to work out what on the dietary measure, and this is why, because you need to plan and implement uh, the methods to control dietary salt consumptions. Okay, so we need to cut down on eating processed foods and those cooked food, cooked food outside homes. So processing is required regarding what? Because the processed food and the cooked food is having a huge content or a huge percentage of salt in it. 10,000 of adults, and these 10,000 of adults have uh, aging between 80 to 69 years are doing what? Now, these 10,000, close to 10,000, because the numbers are 10,659 adults. Now, they participated in the survey, which response rate was 96%. That means this was the age group which was targeted. And based on this age group, what was happening is that they were close to the respondents were close to 96%. And what did they respond? Now, they said that the survey said what? That these people are consuming a huge content of salt with respect to what? The processed food and the cooked food that is being consumed. So the study notes that the salt intake was higher in employed people. It was close to 8.6 gram, and tobacco users, that was 8.3 gram, and those with high blood pressure, that was 8.5 gram. So you have employed people and the salt is 8.6 grams consumption. Then you have tobacco users and the soil consumption is 8.3 grams. Then you have those with high BP, high blood pressure. The soil consumption is 8.5 grams. It specifies that reducing the intake is a beneficial and cost-effective way to bring down elevated blood pressure by 25% and advocates a 30% reduction in the mean population salt intake by 2025. It found that less than half of the participants practiced measures to control dietary salt intake, and the most commonly adopted step to prevent salt overdose was avoiding meals outside home. Now, this is one of the very important recommendations. That means if you want to control the soil content of your body or the soil intake, so what you need to do is that you need to avoid having meals outside home. Cardiovascular diseases. Now, cardiovascular diseases account for an estimated 28.1% of total deaths in India. In 2016, 1.63 million deaths were attributable to hypertension, as against 0.78 million deaths in 1990. So, what is happening here is the study was conducted in a nationally representative sample when dietary sodium intake was estimated from spot urine samples, a validated method used to assess the dietary sodium intake. That means salt in what you are having, that is sodium. So what they are doing is they are measuring the percentage of sodium. Okay, now the population mean was calculated using sampling weights. Thus, the study findings could be generalized at a population level and used to plan and implement dietary salt control measures. The information on awareness and behavior of salt intake was self-reported and could be subjected to information bias. The study did not capture data on the actual dietary sources of salt in food items and condiments for any correlation analysis. The report said while declaring the limitation of the study. That means the reports you are having, the survey you are having. Now, all this is based on limited study. That means a sample of people have been taken, they have been studied. So, based on those reports and analysis, we have presented what the amount of consumption of salt in diet. Okay, so this was with respect to the consumption of or the dietary consumption of Indians. Okay, so this was WHO recommendation. Now let's move on to the next article. I'll do all the articles which are for a small one, and then we'll go on to the detailed analysis. Center softens angel tax rules. Now, here what you need to know is that the government has eased some of the provisions of angel tax introduced in this year's budget on investments into the startups by non-resident investors at a premium over their fair market value. It was introduced five. It has introduced five different valuation methods for shares and offered a 10% tolerance for deviations from the accepted share valuation. Now, what you need to do is you need to know about angel tax over here, and what are the five different valuation methods for share, and that need to be known by you. That means the five different methods. Now, as per a notification that was issued by CBDT, this under the Income Tax Act has been amended with some changes to draft norms in May, bringing some relief to the respective foreign investors, because here also they are talking about who, the non-resident Indians who are going to invest, or sorry, non-resident Indians who are going to invest where, non-resident investors who are going to invest where, in the startups. The introduction of five alternative valuation methods for the valuation of equity shares, which so far could only be valued based on NAV and discounted free cash flow methods, should provide more flexibility to merchant bankers for the valuation of the company. Now, what you need to know is that Deloitte Indian Partner, they and the investors were facing severe practical difficulties in executing a simple transaction involving infusion of capital on account of lack of clarity of the rules. That means the changes that were made, as here it is said, during the year on May. Here I got where. Just a second. Yeah, the draft norm that were released in May. So all the changes that were made in May The rules were lacking clarity. The amended rules bring in more clarity for both investors and investee basis, which an appropriate valuation method can be adopted, reducing the chances of any future litigation. So here, what you need to know about angel tax, uh, how the investment happens in the startups, etc. That's it. Now let's move on to the next section. Okay, now this is the science section, and what is this news saying? That India is running out of phosphorus. Does the answer lie in our switch? Now, why or how is it that India is running out of phosphorus? A handful of countries control most of the world's reserve of phosphorus. This is a major geopolitical concern. The world's largest reserves are in Morocco and the Western Sahara region. But here, phosphorus coexists with cadmium, a toxic heavy metal. Now, you see, in India, we are having phosphorus with cadmium, and this is what this is a what cadmium is a toxic heavy metal. Now, what is the problem behind it? So we'll do a detailed analysis over here. Okay. The problem with the fertilization of land is as old as agriculture itself. When early humans first began to engage in settled agriculture, they quickly realized that while crops require nutrients for their growth, repeated cycles of cultivation and harvest depleted these nutrients, reducing yield over time. So early agriculture societies began to notice that certain areas produced better crops that soils could be replenished. Now, this observation led to practice of restoring essential nutrients in the soil necessary for plant and crop growth. Indigenous communities around the world developed methods of fertilization, for example, using fish remnants, bird dropping as fertilizers. Now, this change in the 19th century, which saw significant advancement in chemistry leading to the creation of synthetic fertilizers. Now, as well as the identification of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, they are the foundation of modern synthetic chemical fertilizers have caused agriculture productivity to boom. That means the introduction of synthetic fertilizers have led to what? Boom is the productivity. The Green Revolution of the mid 20th century accelerated the adoption of high yield crop varieties and intensive use of these fertilizers, and today these substances are crucial to sustain global food production. That means the sustainability of food or global food production is attributed to what fact? Is attributed to the fact of availability of synthetic fertilizers. Fine. Now, but we now have a problem. And what is that problem? That phosphorus is scarce and exists only limited quantities in certain geological formations. Not only are we running out of it, it also pollutes the environment. It doesn't exist as a gas, which means it can only move from land to water, where it leads to algal bloom and eutrophication. That means the scarcity of phosphorus is going to bring what? Algal blooms and eutrophication. The geopolitics and phosphorus. Now, it is very amazing that how geopolitics and phosphorus are linked to each other. So, what we are going to study over here is the history of phosphorus span its discovery in Guano to current global supply chains. Today, a handful of countries control most of the world's reserve of phosphorus. This is a major geopolitical concern. And that means the countries which are having what control over the phosphorus are few countries, and this is a major geopolitical concern. That means this article becomes important for you with respect to the IR section also. And what they are saying is that the world's largest reserves are in Morocco and the Western Sahara region, but here phosphorus coexists with cadmium, a heavy metal that can accumulate in animal and human kidney when ingested. So removing cadmium is also an expensive process. Now, as a result, cadmium-laden fertilizers are often applied to the soil, absorbed by crops, and consumed bioaccumulating in our bodies. Now, studies have found that this accelerates heart disease. That means accumulation of the phosphorus that is found here. That means the phosphorus that is found in India is actually what? This phosphorus is having cadmium, and when this is having cadmium, what is going to happen? Now, this is leading to bioaccumulation, and which will eventually lead to heart diseases. In 2018, EU passed new legislations to regulate cadmium levels in fertilizer. Only 6 countries have substantial cadmium-free phosphorus reserves. Of them, China restricted exports in 2020, and many EU countries no longer buy from Russia. So the market for safe phosphorus has suddenly exploded. So the reason why Sri Lanka banned import of synthetic fertilizers went organic in 2021, later experiencing a sudden drop in crop yield that precipitated a political crisis. That means what is happening here is Sri Lanka went towards what? Organic farming and dropped down the use of phosphorus, and that was one of the reasons that led to political crisis. Today, India is the world's largest importer of phosphorus, most of it from cadmium-laden deposits of West Africa. Not all crops absorb cadmium at the same rate, but paddy do. The uptake of cadmium by crops varies based on soil quality, climatic conditions, and the type and variety of crops grown. So, social cultural factors further affect the intake of cadmium into human bodies and the severity of health effects. Thus, we may face a hard choice down the line. If we do not remove cadmium from the phosphorus, we may face a public health crisis. If we do, fertilizers will become more expensive. So and the next thing that they are talking about is the phosphorus disposal problem. So first, only about a fifth of phosphorus mined is actually consumed through food. Much of it is lost directly to water bodies as agricultural runoff due to the excessive application of fertilizers. Most of the phosphorus that people consume ends up in sewage. Most sewage in India is still not treated or treated only up to secondary level. So even if the organic matter is digested, the effluent discharge from STPs, that is sewage treatment plants, still contains what? Nitrates and phosphates. So of these, nitrates can be digested by denitrifying bacteria. This is in your 12th NCRT biology. What? These are your cycles where you will get to know how the nitrates are digested by the denitrifying bacteria and released safely as nitrogen gas into the atmosphere, while phosphorus remains trapped in the sediments and water column. Phosphorus is scarce and it pollutes. It does not exist as a gas, which means it can only move from land to water, where it leads to algal bloom. And it is then absorbed by the algal bloom that grow in response to high nutrient supply. When they decompose, the bacteria that feed on them consume the dissolved oxygen. The result, water bodies become oxygen starved, leading to fish death. The algal bloom are also toxic, causing respiratory issue, nausea, and other alarms to people exposed to them. Now, finding phosphorus elsewhere. Since much of the phosphorus is not actually taken up by crops, which I have just told you, that means the much of the phosphorus not because see what is happening is that the phosphorus and the nitrogen that are present, that consumption or that can be only taken by the crops depending upon certain conditions, that is your climatic conditions, how is the water availability there, etc. Since much of the phosphorus is not actually taken up by crops, one way to ameliorate the phosphorus paucity is to reduce the use of chemical fertilizers through precision agriculture. Low input agroecological approaches are increasingly proven to be a viable alternative. Now, but there's an increasing interest in closing the phosphorus loop by mining urban sewage to produce high quality phosphorus. Uh, Interest in circular water economies has in fact prompted the European Union, which is almost no phosphorus reserves of its own. Like this is a big thing coming that European Union are having no phosphorus reserves of its own to rethink the urban water cycle. So what is happening over here? First, um, source separating toils, almost two-thirds of the phosphorus we consume leaves in our urine and the rest in feces. Urine also contains large amount of nitrogen and potassium. If we can collect the same and concentrated waste stream, we could generate a local fertilizer source. Source separating toils are designed to separate urine from feces. If they are to become mainstream, buildings and home will require a collection and storage system, leading to a logistic system that collects and processes the urine centrally. Now, what is the second system? Recycling wastewater and sludge. Waste recycling already occurs in some form in India today. Nutrient-rich wastewater is applied directly to agriculture, as at KC Valley and the Kolar projects. Now, which transports Bengaluru's wastewater to water-scarce regions of Kolar. But there are concerns that the quantity of nutrients may be too high and eventually degrade the soil. Similarly, in many cities and towns, farmers already take away the sludge from STPs, that is, your sewage treatment plants. But it is bulky to transport. So while farmers may be willing to pay to transport sludge, they cannot afford to pay an STB for the sludge itself. Now, there is potential here for game-changing innovation, sludge mining from STPs to recover nutrients. Companies like Easy Mining in Europe are retrofitting STPs to recover nutrients from sewage. The end product looks exactly like conventional fertilizer and is in fact higher quality and marketable at comparable cost. Mining phosphorus from sewage allows countries to control their own phosphorus production while also addressing the problem of water body eutrophication. Trouble with incentives. In theory, given the currently high fertilizer prices, these technologies are already economically viable. So why then have they not been realized? Now, what are the problems? First is the incentive at the sourcing and users end of the phosphorus value chain. In rural India, the most powerful farmers in the village are typically also the pesticide and fertilizer dealers, and they extend credit to farmers with smaller holding. As a result, the latter are incentivized to over apply fertilizers rather than to reduce them. Now, this needs to be tackled separately through better extension services and awareness campaign. what is happening in urban India? Sewage is perceived to be an undignified activity historically relegated to people belonging to the so-called lower caste. The regulations reflect this get rid of it mindset. Around the world, regulations have been framed in terms of discharge standards. So, what is happening is that companies have to ensure nitrate and phosphate levels in effluent treatment plants are below an acceptable level. So now here what becomes that dilution is not really a solution to pollution, as the same quantity of nutrients end up in water bodies anyway. So what is happening is that even if regulation and enforcement are tightened, the fundamental problem persists. Wastewater treatment is a cost center, not a revenue center for most cities. No one wants to pay the high cost, not even Bangalore is willing to do so. So if the cities like Bangalore is not willing to pay for it, then how could you even think about the tier 2 cities? And while utilities get paid to supply water, they do not gain additional revenues from treating wastewater to standards. In fact, from their perspective, it merely increases the cost of sewage treatment, further burning them, so they tend to drag their feet until the National Green Tribunal imposes a fine, creating a circular water economy. This is why fundamentally rethinking our whole approach may work. So how is this circular water economy going to work? So this requires what every single stakeholder to make small adjustments. Innovators need to lower the cost of sewage mining. That is exactly what is that is what is demanded. Why? Because if cities like Bangalore is not going for this solution, that means this is not a cost effective remedy. Uh, so first what you need to do is innovators need to go for switch mining. Regulators need to allow the use of urban mined phosphorus where in agriculture. And such changes, while complicated, could also solve multiple problems. India can become less dependent on certain geopolitical crises, like farmers can procure fertilizers at affordable rate. Water bodies will have some hope of becoming swimmable, and public health can gain from the consumption of food grown in cadmium free soils, because we are having this cadmium, and this is ultimately what a toxic heavy metal. Okay, so all this will help us in removing cadmium and from our daily consumptions. Okay, now this was from here. Let's move on to the next news analysis. Okay, so this is saying a report on global digital IDs bring Aadhaar's limitation, and there is a risk in focus. So, in an innocuously titled report on decentralized finance and digital assets released on last Saturday, global rating major Moody's Investor Service has flagged some uncomfortable home truths about India's ambitious digital identification program for residents. Aadhaar, as the world's largest digital ID program with biometric and demographic details of over a billion residents, Aadhaar stands out for its scale, but at a broader level, the agency has red flagged security and privacy risks from centralized digital ID systems such as Aadhaar, where a single entity controls identifying credentials. Now, Moody's, which has mooted decentralized ID systems that give users more control over their data has also lent weight to worries about the efficacy of Aadhaar's biometric-based authentication system to verify identities. The system often results in service denial and the reliability of biometric technology, especially for manual laborers in what humid climates, is questionable. Now, what is being said? While this observation is of relevance amid the government's push to switch all payments under Manrega to an Aadhaar-based system, that means all the payments of Manrega should be linked to the Aadhaar-based system. It echoes the concern raised ever since its launch under the United Progressive Alliance regime. Now, what is happening? The vigorous pursuit of Aadhaar after some initial hesitation under the present government has manifested in the 12-digit number becoming mandatory for almost all welfare benefit to weaker section as well as activities such as opening bank or provident fund accounts, securing telephone connections and remitting taxes. Its use backed by the expansion of access to no-frill bank account, mobile phone connections has indeed enabled a direct transfer of benefits to million in welfare schemes, weeding out the ghosts and the middlemen. That means if you see your details are being linked to the bank accounts and the scheme of DBT, that is the direct benefit transfer scheme, had been very beneficial. Why? Because the middlemen were removed. Now, yeah, an audit of UIDAI by the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India, that is CAT, released last year has flagged lapses that jeopardize the privacy and compromise data security along with flaws in enrollment processes leading to duplication and faulty biometrics. India has pushed for digital public infrastructure like the one built around the edifice of Aadhaar as a means for service delivery in G20 nations and beyond. Now, having appointed a part-time chief to the UIDAI last month, the government must seek an honest review of course, the correction in the Aadhaar program before expanding its linkage. Further, be it electoral roles, private entities, or Manrega payment. That means you need to go on what? You need to go on reviewing the corrections in the Aadhaar program, because the data that is being linked from Aadhaar is made mandatory in most of the welfare benefit schemes. So this interest shouldn't be jeopardized. Okay, so this was important. uh, Now, what else is important is that you should, since I'm short of time, you should go with this article that what are the Pakistan's internal challenges and what is the current shifting or what is the current scenario that is going on. Why? Because Pakistan is our neighbor and any changes would definitely affect our geopolitics also. So layman reading is required over here. Other than that, you can one thing again very important, the climate change. Why? Because in G20 summit also, and often now and then we are discussing about climate change. Now the article talks about the climate change tackling new diseases scenarios. So see what is happening is we are, we have this Paris Agreement, etc. So all this is about what? We are talking about global warming, the heat, the temperature, etc. So what need to be done is that you need to work, or you need to just go through it, so that you could understand that what is the scenario with climate change. There is another world that is running. That means there would be discoveries of the new diseases. For example, right now, in my previous analysis, I have talked about Nipah virus. So this Kerala has witnessed the outbreak of Nipah virus. Then we just went through COVID crisis. Okay, so all this need to be studied with respect to the climate change. So that's why this article becomes important. Okay, so thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.